everyone. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us. My name is Shanae Williams. I'm the council member for the 1st District. We have a few people. I'd like to just start off by saying thank you before we get into the meeting. Jesse Montero, he's the executive director for our public library. We want to thank him for partnering with us on this, and they basically provided the Zoom link, so we want to appreciate that. And thank you, Rose, for all of your assistance and your help. Also, I don't know if Sarah from our downtown BID is on, Sarah Brody. She's the executive director for the downtown BID. And as you know, this project is going to be in the downtown. And so, as a board member, I thought it would be really cool if we work together with the BID to let not only the residents know, but the businesses as well about what this project really entails, what's happening, and what that means for everyone. And so I'd like to thank Sarah for her partnership in getting the information out to everyone in the downtown. And with that, hold on, can you give me 1 second? I'm actually gonna ask, I'm gonna introduce the team from AMS in a second, but I wanna make sure that our planning and director, Deputy Commissioner Lee Elman is able to join us. He's having some issues, but just give me 1 minute. Okay, so he's going to hopefully join us shortly. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to AMS Acquisitions for jumping on board so last minute and being willing to work with me in the community to put this project to the community so everyone knows what's going on and so that everyone can have a say in the process. That's really, we're really trying to make this a community effort. And so I appreciate, Mike and just Avi and everyone from AMS, and certainly John Clifford, who will be doing the presentation. He's the lead architect for AMS. And we have with us Nina Peak as well, in case you guys have questions in the end of their presentations, and I can't answer them and Lee can't answer them. Nina's here to help assist with that. So we want to thank them for being here tonight. I guess, John, I'm going to turn it over to you. And Rose, maybe you'll have to share the screen so that he can do the presentation, and then we'll go from there. And folks, I just want to ask you guys, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to all the questions in the end, but we're going to also be mindful of the time and try not to have like a 2-hour meeting. If we can get this done in a reasonable amount of time, in an hour or so, that would be ideal, but we're not going to rush the process. Thank you. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shanae. Rose, if you could share the screen with Sarab, my colleague, he'll drive the show. First of all, I want to thank you, councilperson, for inviting us, and to all the members of the community out there. Michael Mitnick was not able to join us tonight for good celebration. He and his wife just had their fourth daughter, so he's a little bit preoccupied with that. So I am going to take his place. I think Ryan Sutherland from AMS may be on the line as well. But what I'm going to do is show the rezoning proposal that we presented at the planning board. It just went through a scoping session, and I'll go through the 3 areas that we're looking to rezone around downtown Yonkers. And then I think there's a Q&A that you can do through the chat function. Okay. Next slide. So when we first started, we really wanted to look at downtown Yonkers and how these 3 areas can be additive to the community and to the neighborhood, looking at what the context was, not just looking at them as development projects, but looking at them as an integral part of downtown Yonkers community health and economic health and overall 24/7 vitality. Okay. So we first started looking at what's been happening, especially in downtown Yonkers. There's been a lot of private development, mainly along the waterfront, and RXR now is the first kind of upland private development of a significant size along Vanderdonk Park. But then we looked at a lot of the amazing government infrastructure improvements that have happened in downtown Yonkers, primarily around the daylighting of the Sawmill River from the train station up to Chicken Island. So we're looking at 3 different sites. The first one is Teutonia, which is down by the train station on Buena Vista Avenue, just on the bluff right above the MTA line. The second, we call it North Broadway, but it's really up on the hill on Locust Hill Road. It connects to North Broadway, which we'll show you how, but it's leaving North Broadway pretty much the way it is. And then Chicken Island, which is now mostly a parking lot across from City Hall on Nepperhan, New Main Street, New School Street, and Palisade Avenue. And we went back and we looked at how Yonkers was formed, and it's very small town kind of feel. It's not big, broad streets, and it's not a grid. It's more human scaled. And as we start thinking about these rezonings, thinking about how they integrate into that human scale, and especially the historic downtown, and become additive. And again, just looking at some of the amazing progress that's been made, it's hard to believe that the park now in front of the train station used to be a big parking lot like that. And Mill Street Courtyard really is becoming a vibrant place, linking North Broadway over to Main Street and then down to Vanderdonk Park. And then the daylighting, the first phase of daylighting that's occurred at Chicken Island, where the Sawmill River was completely encased in a culvert on the corner of New Main Street and Nepperhan. So we started thinking about all of these things that have been happening, looking at our site and how they kind of ring the historic Getty Square, North Broadway downtown in these kind of underdeveloped parking lots, particularly at Chicken Island, but even the vacant lots on Teutonia, and then some underdeveloped lots on the North Broadway sites, and thinking about how this can all be additive to kind of reinforce this and also connect the communities together. So I'm going to go through our proposals. So this is the current view. It's a drone view looking from the Hudson River. You can see City Hall. The Chicken Island site is in the back where the parking lot is. Teutonia is in the foreground. These are vacant lots on Buena Vista right above the MTA. And then North Broadway is kind of hard to see because there's some trees on the bluff right behind Getty Square, right a little bit farther up from where the cursor is, right there. Okay. And this shows the proposed development at full rezoning. So Teutonia again is in the foreground. There's a podium on Buena Vista with 2 towers that rise above it. The North Broadway sites are the 2 towers right there in the middle. And then Chicken Island is the development over to the upper right beyond City Hall. So now we're going to look at these in plans and we'll go through sections. So we kind of put Chicken Island and North Broadway together just because of their proximity. So you can see Getty Square where the little V triangle is, and Palisades going up, North Broadway making the curve. So they are pretty close, although there's some pretty strong topography changes, especially as you go up Locust Hill. So we'll look at North Broadway first. So North Broadway, this just shows the massing of the buildings in yellow with the existing buildings on North Broadway and Getty Square in white. And as you can see here, the buildings are not really on North Broadway. We have 2 little pieces that come down. They're contextual, the same scale and height as the existing historic buildings on North Broadway. And these buildings are at the top of the hill at the end of Overlook Terrace and Baldwin Place. So this is kind of an aerial site plan. So you can see Baldwin Place coming off Locust Hill Road and then Overlook Terrace. Right now, if you're not familiar with these streets, they currently dead end at the top of the hill. There's no real connection down to Getty Square other than walking down Locust Hill Avenue, down Palisade, and then into Getty Square. We're going to propose a connection directly from this upper neighborhood down to the lower neighborhood, which used to exist in a lot of places in Yonkers, but we'll show you some detail of that a little bit further along. So this is, again, a drone view, just so we could see everything in context. So North Broadway is in the foreground, kind of curving to the right, and you can see the Chicken Island site, the parking lot in the upper right, and then Baldwin Place and Overlook Terrace, dead end at the top of the hill there. And these are the proposed buildings at the top of the hill and the little connection buildings that come down to North Broadway in that same context. The other buildings in the upper right are the Chicken Island buildings. We'll see those in more detail a few slides down the road. So now we're just kind of zooming in a little bit, again, just so you can see that connection. The bigger buildings are up at the top of the hill, and then they stair step down from Overlook Terrace and Baldwin Place, so they have a connection to downtown Yonkers, so they're not isolated up on the top of the hill, allowing not just residents of the residential buildings, these are both residential buildings, but the public to go between lower downtown and upper Locust Hill. And we're going to show you how we're doing that. We're creating a new public realm staircase at the extension of Overlook Terrace. It's just an aerial view right across from Mill Street Courtyard. So that's North Broadway at the bottom, and that street that you see just above the trees up there is Overlook Terrace. So this is a proposal, creating a public stair that would have ADA accessibility through an elevator with these stair step buildings with restaurants and shops at the lower end of North Broadway and going the second floor up the hill, so that Overlook Terrace and Baldwin now have a connection, a public connection, directly from there to North Broadway and Getty Square. And this is where the building would have that stair step, where this little one-story building is. This is directly across from the Mill Street Courtyard, where the Mill Street Courtyard hits North Broadway. It's existing view, and this is the proposed. So again, really keeping the scale of North Broadway human, that staircase that goes up to the top of the hill. And this staircase, if you came straight down, would connect directly into the Mill Street Courtyard. Chicken Island is the next site. So the yellow shows the massing of the proposed buildings. You can see the daylighting of the Sawmill River that already exists at the corner of New Main Street and Nepperhan. And we really want to step the mass down to really focus this neighborhood around the park, that this new neighborhood, the centerpiece will be that park, but also taking that parking lot and making sure that it's broken up into blocks and streets just like the rest of Yonkers. Okay, this is an aerial drone view. You can see City Hall on the left. This is when the daylighting of the park was just in construction, so it's not fully completed yet. And then built. So again, the buildings get lower as they go toward the park. They step up into the middle of the site. You can see that there are streets that connect both to Palisades and to New School Street, that it's not insulated, it's integrated into the rest of the community. And the buildings in the background in the center of the screen would be the North Broadway buildings. So we really want to see what this felt like. I mean, these are all drone views and we're probably never going to experience them that way. You experience streets and neighborhoods from the street as a pedestrian. So this is Palisades looking up from Getty Square toward New School Street. The new firehouse would be up on the right. You can see it in construction. Okay. And this is kind of a wider angle, just so you could see that what we're doing is continuing the street height of Palisade Avenue so that we can have commercial uses and stores on the ground floor to continue that as part of downtown shopping district up to the firehouse. And then the tower is set back off of Palisades Avenue within the neighborhood. This is a view on New School Street as it exists. So the new firehouse is in construction at the foot of the street on the left. The old firehouse that was demolished was on the right where the vacant lot is. And this is the parking lot for Chicken Island. So we're looking from Nepperhan toward Palisade. And this is proposed. So Chicken Island site is on the left. The old firehouse site is on the right. active uses on the street, and really making this a complete street with a complete streetscape. And finally, the view from the corner of Nepperhan and New Main Street, where the current park is, existing and proposed. So we're continuing the streets, making sure it's connected out to Palisades. And there's another street that goes to New School Street. And again, the lower height would be around the park, and the higher density, the higher buildings would be in the center of the neighborhood. The final site of the 3 rezonings is Teutonia on Buena Vista. This is the massing, 2 towers on a podium. The podium is mostly parking, with the lobbies and retail on Buena Vista Avenue, and then the towers are set back above the podium height. This existing view, drone view from the river, there's the site right there. And this is the proposal. So that podium is backing up to the Metro North tracks. And then again, on Buena Vista, so this is Buena Vista looking toward Vanderdonk Park, so it's looking toward the north. So Metro North would be off the screen to your left. And then with the street view rendered in, so this would be the lobby for one of the buildings where it says Buena Vista. One of the things we're doing is taking the facade of the Teutonia Hall and integrating it into this facade. It's now cataloged in pieces, and we want to kind of bring that back to Yonkers history. And then thinking about how this can be transformative for downtown with all of the investment that's already been happening around downtown. So this is the waterfront development zone. You can see Vanderdonk Park there that's kind of lighted, and then the RXR buildings that recently got completed. Chicken Island is at the top of the screen where the parking lot is. And then this is with all the developments built in. So they're all kind of following the Sawmill River daylighting, whether it's Vanderdonk Park, Mill Street Courtyard, or up at Chicken Island, and really kind of forming this ring of 3 residential neighborhoods around downtown and Getty Square, so that it has more of a 24/7 day kind of residential aspect to it, and not just a Monday through Friday or Saturday, Sunday shopping and office worker environment to kind of complement this and provide more residents for downtown. Another view. This is the current view, and then the proposed. So downtown Yonkers pretty much stays intact, and these are on the vacant sites that are around downtown Yonkers. And then Nina, I don't know whether you want to just talk about where we are in the SEQRA process.
Actually, John, Nina, thank you so much for your presentation, John. We'll stop right there. And since you brought up the SEQRA process, we actually have Lee Ellman, who was able to join us from our planning department. Lee, if you can't unmute yourself, I guess we will unmute you, if I can find your name. And you
What
can.
is your name?
Lee Ellman.
L-E-E?
Here. Yes, here he is. Ask here.
Unmute.
Hi,
Okay,
Lee.
so, hi. Took a while. I have to say, you're my age and the Zoom doesn't work. You want to put your boot through the screen. Took a couple of minutes. Okay, I won't go over the entirety of the SEQRA process because I don't think that is the important point for this evening. Where we are is still at the very beginning of the process. The process includes what is called an environmental impact statement. The environmental impact statement is meant to address all of the potential environmental impacts that a project might have. And the way to thoughtfully decide what those impacts are and what we ought to be looking at is the scoping process. The way scoping works, and scoping is nothing more than a narrative table of contents for the environmental impact statement. So this is not the occasion, although nobody would stop you, this is not the occasion to send in comments, I love it, or opposite, I hate it. This is really the occasion to ask that question of the city, of the lead agency. I think this ought to be in the review of this project. And I've been using this example over and over again, partly because it's a new thing to come to Yonkers, partly because on the face of it, it may sound a little silly, but I would think that there are people in the audience that won't find it silly. So we have several 40-story towers being proposed. They are along the Hudson River. The Hudson River is a migration flyway for birds. So it would not be unreasonable for someone to say, you know, city, you ought to look at the impact of the difference in height between the 25-story building that was permitted and the 40-story building that is being sought. So we hope that the public asks questions that come from their good knowledge and their self-interest. So to maybe put something more to the point, the proposals will change not just the amount of traffic, but traffic patterns. So if I was a retailer in the downtown area, I might ask a question about that. You know, I might ask, well, are there going to be changes in the traffic pattern? I enjoy two-way traffic on my street, and I think that's great for my business. Are you considering changing it? Or alternately, I have a small store at this corner, and I note that the proposal is seeking a relatively large amount of commercial retail and office. Have you looked at the impacts of that change in the economy of the downtown area? So what we hope to get from people in the community, from business owners, from concerned citizens in general, is a series of comments and questions that go to those things that you are most interested in seeing in the EIS. The reason that we had to do this process over the holiday season is because the way SEQRA is set up from a regulatory perspective, the applicant, AMS, the architects, AKRF, Ms. Peak, put together the draft scope. They turn it over to the lead agency, which is the planning board. And then the planning board has to both seek comments and turn the scope around back to the applicant in 60 days. So having the comment period end on December 21st is done so that we can review the comments, put them into usable format, and then have the planning board review them before their January 18th, give or take a day or so, deadline. So, you know, part of SEQRA is getting all the information that we need from each other, but part of it is also not dilly-dallying, not putting off the developers and offering the death of 1,000 cuts of a project. We want to be able to get to the heart of the issues, talk about them, answer them in the EIS, and then when the EIS is put out for public review, at that point, is when the public will be able to review the EIS and make comment on all of the information that's found in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. John, is there anything more to your presentation, or can we stop sharing the screen?
We can stop.
Okay, thank you, and thank you. So I guess we have some questions that are already in the chat. I'm just going to start from the top. The first question is from Eileen O'Connor. Eileen, do you want to ask your question, or do you feel that it was already answered in the rest of the presentation? You can unmute yourself.
Actually, Shanae, I think the best way with questions is just to read them off, because then I would have to unmute each individual, and we have quite a bit of questions.
Okay. So, okay, Rose, maybe you can help me with reading the questions so that we don't miss any.
Yeah,
So I'm going to just read from the top of the questions that I saw first. Eileen's question was, street rendering would be helpful. Do you have that? What would those look like? What would these look like? I think we did kind of see those. Eileen, are you satisfied? Thumbs up? No, you're not satisfied. Okay. So John, do you have an answer?
Yeah, we have some other street renderings that we can share. We didn't, obviously this was a big presentation for a big group, but we are starting, and this is, as Lee said, the very beginning of this process. You can imagine with something, 3 neighborhoods like this is pretty complicated, but we started looking at those. We looked at, I think I showed the one on Palisade. I showed the one on, which was a street rendering, the one on Buena Vista for Teutonia. And then we did the North Broadway ones for the North Broadway. And then we also did the street renderings on New School Street and then at Nepperhan and New Main Street. But we can continue looking at those, but this was the first pass to see what those felt like on the street, because as I said, that's how people experience things.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the Teutonia is with those huge 40-story buildings that are proposed on the river. I mean, the thing that I'm upset about is that the view of the river and the Palisades has been privatized, and this would further that along. It would just 40 stories is massive. We're still upset about the 23-story building down by the Bizak Center. But you know, there's no, for me, it's what makes Yonkers beautiful is it is in the context of where it is on the Hudson and the Palisades. And it would absolutely create another canyon that you don't even know the river's there. You know, from that street rendering, I got no sense of what was beyond it. So that's a big objection I have.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Eileen. So, John, do you think you can get those street renderings to me or through the administration, and we can send that out to anyone who would like to see them, make them public?
Yeah, we can. Well, you'll have the ones in the package, but I think for the question is what is the view from the street, obviously, and how is that going to be impacted by these developments? And we can do site studies of what's there now and what's there afterwards, and how, whether there's an impact. I think that's what the question was, really, more than the street view. The view of the river and the Palisades. How is that being affected from the public realm? Okay. Right? Okay. So we can address that. We'll probably have to put something together, but in this ongoing process that Lee described, that can be one of the things we look at.
Thank you. The next question is from Terry Joshi. I would like to know if the building heights in these renderings are accurately matched to the heights described in the draft scope.
They are.
I'm going to unmute Terry as well. We're going to change the platform to allow everyone to speak to make sure that their questions are answered.
Thanks, Rose.
Terry, you're unmuted.
Okay. Yeah, because when I count the stories, perhaps inaccurately, the Teutonia ones look to be in the rendering 25 or 26 stories. They don't appear to be 40, which is somewhat misleading. And if John is going to correct me on that, I'll accept that correction.
They're They are rendered to the height in the DIS. They were accurately modeled. The reason it might look like there are fewer stories is because we did, and it's done in a lot of buildings where you do like a double bay. So it looks like one story in the rendering, but it's really 2 floors within that bay.
Okay, thank you.
The next question is from Lupe. Lupe, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I wanted to ask what would happen to the businesses that are already there. I remember when the Chicken Island parking lot was restored, the whole block of businesses were knocked down and they were not relocated in their same district. So I want to know what will happen to the small businesses.
I'm not sure I understand the question. We're not the development areas that we're talking about, Chicken Island and Teutonia, are vacant land. North Broadway is mostly vacant, and the only businesses that would be affected are the 2 small businesses where the step downs came on North Broadway that I showed you. That 1-story building was one of them, and they're actually there's no business there right now, but that would get rebuilt with a shop there as well. But we're not tearing down any other businesses.
Thank you for your question, Lupe. And thank you for answering that, John. The next question is from, who do I see next? Alan Rose.
Hi there. Yes, thanks for all the information. Just wondered if all of the residential units are going to be rentals.
That I'm going to have to let AMS answer. I mean, this is a rezoning for a long term, so I can't answer. I think they're going to be rental, but there could be condominiums as well.
Thank you, John. Can I just also, before we continue with the questions, I noticed that there are quite a few elected officials on this Zoom meeting, and I just want to announce that they're here. We have the Council President, Mike Cater, the Majority Leader, Corazon Pineda-Isaac, Councilman John Rubo. We have former Council Member Michael Sabatino, and also former Council President Chuck Lesnick, as well as Deputy Mayor Jim Kavanaugh. And I also, yeah, I think that's all I saw. Oh, and I think, did I see former Council Member Simra Brandon? I believe I saw Simra as well, yes. So thank you all for joining. And we also have Barry McGoey from our firefighter union. So thank you, Barry, for joining us. And now I guess we can go back to all of the questions. And if any of you at any time want to say anything, please feel free to let us know. Just private message me in the chat and we'll make sure that you get that opportunity. The next question is from, where am I? Jose Centeno, or it's more of a statement. If you don't have a question.
I think it's Marcus John.
Did I miss? Oh, Marcus John. Okay. So Marcus John, you're next if you want to unmute yourself. Oh, you're looking for an email, Marcus John?
Yeah, that's it for people who are opposed to these concepts and kind of want to organize something against it.
Well, Lee Elman would probably be the best person for that. Lee, do you want to put your email in the chat? And you can also say it, but it's probably better to spell it out. You're muted, Lee.
My email for any of the scoping comments is in the scoping notice and the scoping document. My email is Lee, lee.elman, ELLMAN, @yonkersny.gov. And that is the same email format as Councilwoman Williams. Just lee.elman, yonkersny.gov. I do have to ask that you please send in your comments. The planning board scoping session, unless Councilwoman, you are going to collect the comments and submit them. This is, I don't have the facility to take down the comments here. So the comments should be sent to me via email or to the planning board at 87 Nepperhan, room 320, in order to get into the scoping process.
Thank you, Lee. I think it would be best if everyone sent their comments directly to you, but if you can't or prefer not to, you can also send them to my office and I will make sure that they do reach Lee. And I'll put my email in the chat as well. With that, Rose, do you know where I am in this chat with questions?
Next question comes from Marcia Klein.
Okay.
Unmute her now.
I just wanted to know if you've studied the impact this is going to have on the city services and the Yonkers Public Schools. A project like that will have a huge impact on everything, from sewage service to policing to schools.
Not yet. That is the process that we are going into. So the question that you asked is probably one of the fundamental questions that we all know has to be looked at. So city services, infrastructure, police, fire, education, all of that is really the most basic, which is not to say that your comment wasn't valid and not to say that I would not like to see it in writing.
Okay, I will try to send it to you.
Next question, Sarah Brody.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. I think, number one, I am the executive director of the Yonkers Downtown BID. I think this is a very exciting project for the downtown community. It brings a lot to the area and it really will make some significant changes. And I think it's wonderful for economic development. I do have, a multifaceted question. One is, how will these buildings affect the parking? There already is an issue with lack of parking. And so will parking be provided or how will it be handled? I'm concerned about the traffic patterns and the amount of traffic that the buildings will bring to the downtown. The roads, particularly on North Broadway, are very narrow, as you know, and in that area. I also think about the fact that the tall buildings will bring a lot of wind and air and movement, perhaps in areas that have not had that whipping wind when you go around the corner. I wonder if that'll affect them. And the other thing is, how will the sound be affected in these communities by the large buildings, or by the differential between the large and the small buildings? Some of the areas, particularly I'll say North Broadway, happen to have sound issues, and I wonder whether it'll affect it. And thanks for listening to my 4 questions.
Okay, I will try to
I'll
answer
write them to Lee.
some of them. The ones that I can answer, particularly about how parking is handled. All of the buildings have self-contained parking on them for any residential or if they have ground floor commercial use. So they're all self-parked, so they're not going to be parking in the street or doing any of that. The traffic, wind, and sound, I think Nina can maybe address how that's studied and how that would be studied. I want to make sure I got all the questions. Yeah.
Those were the issues. Thanks.
One comment on that is that part of the rezoning request is for amendments to the parking ratios to reduce the parking ratios for certain uses within the AMS proposal.
Thank you.
So as John said, there will be parking provided, but and all of that will be studied. But one of the requests from the applicant is to amend the zoning ordinance in regards to parking.
And if there's any way we can chat about the traffic for a moment or the traffic patterns, that would be great. If not, I can wait for an answer. if
Well,
nobody-
I mean, that is the single largest, probably the single largest section of the EIS at this point. John, help me recall, I think we are at 50 intersections already. So
Wow.
all of the intersections within and surrounding the downtown, going out to the Sawmill River Parkway, going up to Ashburton Avenue, as I recall. I'm sorry, I'm working from home, so I don't have it in front of me, but it
Okay.
is considerable.
Thank you.
And it's all in the scope. You can look that up, Sarah, in the scope that's available from the scoping notice.
Okay, thanks.
I have a follow-up question from Miss Dorothy Clark. She said, if you can please confirm how many spaces and can parking be included in the rent because of parking impacts on surrounding streets? Could Lee explain what he means by amending the parking?
Sure. Well, one of the requests in the zone amendment is to change the ratios. And again, I'm very sorry. If I was at the office, I'd have all the stuff at my fingertips. One of the requests is to amend the ratios for certain commercial, retail, and office uses. So, and this is just hypothetical. If today we said that you need one space per 300 square feet of a retail use, as an example, the request might be for one space per 500 square feet of retail space. So it's that kind of an amendment. And again, available in the scope as explained what the program is.
Thank you. Who's next?
Chuck
Rose?
Lesnick? Chuck, are you there?
We can't hear you, Chuck.
Okay, here we are. Thank you. I also share a lot of Sarah's excitement about the proposal, but that doesn't mean the community doesn't have some really valid points, and this will be a little bit shaped differently when it finally goes through. I was council president when we approved somewhat reluctantly the previous developers allowing the facade to come down on Teutonia Hall. And that was a really interesting facade, very important to the downtown. And I remember they showed us how it would line up with the street, and it really had that same historic feel. You only had one slide today. It looked like you might have used the bricks, but the awning looked very modern. I didn't really get the same feel of it. Is this going to go to the Landmarks Board so that they can opine that this has the same sort of historic sensitivity as the old facade had? I remember Steve Burns and Deborah Cohn were involved in that request, and we trusted them as people that we would have something that had the historical integrity. Who's going to review this proposal? Can the Landmarks Board be inserted in to just give their blessing that that facade is appropriate?
Who, I don't know who to direct that. John, do you know about the facade of the building at Teutonia? And maybe Lee can talk about whether or not the Landmarks Board.
So I can talk a little bit about the facade at Teutonia. So the facade, unfortunately, was torn down, but it's cataloged, and it's our hope to take that and reassemble the facade. Clearly not as Teutonia Hall, but as a historical marker of the facade as much as we can on the facade of our building. I don't recall what you're talking about, but I don't think we're adding a modern awning to it. We're pretty much preserving. It was a little bit down the view from the rendering that I showed. It wasn't in the foreground, it was in the background. Because we're not sure exactly how that's going to come out yet, because we haven't fully designed that part of the facade. But the intent is to take the pieces of the facade, reassemble them, and restore them at the end of the block closest to where Teutonia Hall actually stood, and probably have some kind of marker of what it was and why it was important to Yonkers, because it can't be really utilized in a modern building. The openings for everything weren't even big enough for the doors and windows for a modern building.
Okay, Chuck, did that answer your question? Keep it short, please, Chuck.
Just want to, I'm not the expert, but if the landlord's board, whether officially or unofficially, could have some review role in this, I'd be happy.
I'm sure we can make that, we can figure a way to make sure that they have a say in this. I know that there's a lot of people on this call from the Landmarks Board. We want to make sure that they submit their comments now and further in the SEQRA process and just the entire process throughout. But I'll work with you on that, Chuck. Thank you.
All right, and the next question is Hunter McGregor.
Hello, good evening. My question is regarding the impact on the homeless population in Yonkers. I've been living in Yonkers 20 years collectively, and I've seen the decline. And I'm not sure about the regard for the homeless population as we're thinking about the development of these projects. So if someone could speak to that, how has it been considered?
I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Nina or John, but I don't think this project is going to be housing for formerly homeless or homeless people in general. This is, this is going to be a luxury project, right? These buildings are going to be luxury buildings. Certainly the homeless will not be able to afford it. That's a conversation though that I think needs to happen, but I'm not sure it's the conversation for tonight because I can't imagine that AMS has plans for the homeless, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
One of the areas of study, Councilwoman, it will be, while there is no direct displacement because there are no occupied buildings being taken down, but a question whenever one is doing an EIS in an urban area would be to discuss secondary displacement. So
Right.
that will be part of the puzzle.
Thank you.
And that's part of the conversation that we need to, as a city, we need to have with the county on how to address that because it is definitely an issue. Do you hope, Ms. Hunter Gregor, did we answer your question somewhat?
Yes, I just hope that that this conversation takes place with the county soon, as they consider putting all these luxury buildings in these areas.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many questions would you like to take, Shanae? Next, we have quite a few questions, probably about 15 more questions and comments, a lot more. But next up, we have Vinnie Bagwell.
Well, before Vinnie asks her question, if we have any questions that are specific to the SEQRA process and the environmental impact study, because that, the deadline to submit your comments on that is coming up in a week, the 21st. And so I want to make sure that if there's any confusion on that now is the time for folks to ask those questions. All of the other very important questions can certainly be answered at a later time.
Who would they contact for the SEQRA questions, Shanae?
Definitely Lee Elman.
Well, please don't get confused. All your questions at this point are SEQRA questions. Every question that someone has asked every question that I think has been asked has been a valid scoping comment. So if you want to register those, again, please send them in to the planning board through me. So, the question about the facade, the question about homelessness in the downtown area, the questions about views, all of those are questions that are meant to be part of scoping.
And I think it would be helpful, if it's helpful to the group, the scoping document, which is basically the outline of what's going to be studied. So it includes all the intersections that are part of the traffic study. To speak to Sarah's question earlier, it includes the methodology and the extent of the analyses that are going to be done for air quality, for noise, for wind, for height, visual impact analyses. It has view sheds. It has a map that shows where all the photographs are going to be taken and where visual simulations will be prepared. All of the detail of what is currently in the scope are available on the scoping document on the city's website, and we can share with Councilwoman Williams the exact link for that, and she can distribute it to the folks on this call. So you all have the opportunity to take a look at what's currently in there. And then if there's other things that you want us to take a look at, please send those comments to Lee.
And one of the things people need to remember is that all that we have produced, that is the applicant's team and the city's team at this point, is a teaser brochure. What we will be coming up to is a multi-volume, huge document. No kidding, it will be hundreds of pages. It will be hundreds of illustrations. It will be comprehensive. And once it is released, it is then still open to additional questions. So, for example, Eileen's question about, I want to see more of the relationship of streetscape to the proposed building. So we have heard that, we will look at that. But even after the EIS is published and those studies are available, the public still has the opportunity to say, well, that's all very nice, but I don't know if you really got it, or that's all really nice, but I need to see it from a different angle. So this is not a one and done kind of program, but we do need to hear your concerns about the scope. That is the closest, that's about the only thing within SEQRA that is at all close to a one and done. We set the scope, we then know what we're all working on, we work on it, we publish it. So the more comments we get, the more specific you are asking for comments for within the EIS, the better we are able to answer your questions.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. So, we're an hour in just about. I know we started a few minutes late, but I do want to make sure that we try to get as many questions answered as possible. So maybe what we'll do is go back to the original plan of just me and possibly Rose just asking all of the questions really quickly so that we can get them answered. If you guys have to go, Nina and John, I know, and anyone else from your team that's here, if you have to go, please just let us know. But if you have some time, we'd like to continue to ask some more questions. And I guess now we can have Vinnie Bagwell ask her question, and then we'll take it from there.
Hi there. I'm really delighted to see that we've moved in a quantum leap in revitalizing the downtown waterfront area. And I heard Lee when he said that there'll be hundreds of illustrations and suggestions, but one of the things that concerns me at first glance is how you're going to humanize your design. Oftentimes, architects, when they show these kinds of renderings, you see what they're going to do with the buildings, but culture of place is what kind of humanizes them. And so my question is whether or not there is going to be any kind of process set aside, matching, whatever the case may be, to create opportunities for public art, opportunities for Yonkers artists to have jobs.
It's a really good question, and I don't think that we've talked about it. So it's something that we will talk with AMS about and see if we.
I mean, it's a tremendous opportunity, for the downtown waterfront district in terms of beautification, in terms of expanding public art about history. I mean, there's so many things you could do with public art. And again, it makes it a walkable town. It makes it an engaging place. It makes it a destination.
Yeah, point taken. It's really a great suggestion, so thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Before we continue, Council President Mike Hader has something he'd like to ask or say. Can we unmute him?
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams and the Yonkers Public Library for putting this very informative question and answer. My question is for Mr. Ellman. Lee, while you were giving your presentation, and I was reading a lot of the comments, and there was a lot of acronyms: EIS, SEQRA, a lot of TOD, Transit and Oriented Development. Many people are not familiar with this process. And to be quite honest, it could be intimidating when you're not familiar with this process and what's at stake. So my request, and not a question, is, can you prepare a user-friendly page or a user-friendly document with what the process is, what are the deadlines, and what are the important vernacular that we use? So for many people on here, this is just the start of the process. We're 30 days in, give or take. But what can the community expect in the next 60 days? What's going to happen in 90 days? What's going to happen in 120 days? So that way there's no panic button. And also the purpose of scoping. You and I, and when you came before the council, we discussed many of these issues: infrastructure, displacement, concerns about our residents without housing. So I think if you could put that information out there, I think it will be very helpful, and a timeline, or, an outside timeline of what people can expect, what residents can expect. Is that a fair request?
That is actually something that both Nina Peak has in her slide deck, that is also available from the DEC in a very general way, because a lot of the timeline depends on how quickly things get written. The timeline that we can define are regulatory timelines, like the 60 days that we're in the middle of for scoping, but certainly, and we can demystify some of the abbreviations. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Lee, it's more than just defining what EIS is or SEQRA is. It's more what happens with these comments that people, and I assume, and I encourage everyone, share Lee's email, no spam, no chain letters, and share your comments. But what are people to expect when those come in? And
you got some good recipes, Mike. They can spam me on that.
We'll give you some hummus. How about that, Lee? But on a serious note, it's important that people feel that they're part of the process. And if we make it, I do know that there's a lot of this stuff on the DEC website, but without a Google search, we need to make this.
But I'm saying, well, I'm sorry. My answer to you was, we have that material easily available. It's pre-done. We can polish it, smooth it out, and get it out to the public, through the council, through the planning board, in fairly short order. I mean, as soon as I'm back in the office, I can work on that.
And that will be great. And then my second request, either through John Clifford or Nina Peck, if there's ever any updated renderings, new drawings, or anything, without us needing to ask, if that could be made public through the planning board, through the council, through Councilwoman Williams, people would like to see what's going on throughout this process. Those are really my two requests, not really a question. So thank you so much, Ms. Ellman, Ms. Peak, Mr. Clifford, Shanae, great work. Rose, thank you so much.
Thank you, Council President. Some other questions. Folks seem to be concerned about the congestion, and also there's a lot of concern about what the current residents in the area wants, to see if this is something that, that you had or AMS had already looked into or did research about. Do you guys have any comments on that? Starting with maybe the congestion. you know, and certainly with Teutonia Hall proposing 40-story.
That's the very first thing that we're looking at. So when just to I guess make it into a slightly personal and professional comment, on looking at the applicant's proposal, I really was agnostic as to what the right height ought to be, because the EIS will be the document that helps us understand. It could be that 40 stories is not a problem for the area, given the amount of parking, given how traffic is handled. It could be that the engineering and scientific study that we do as part of this shows that 40 stories might not be the right number, but we don't guess about those things. We study them and then work from the study.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Tara James asked about the types of units that these towers will have. In the scope, I can answer that. I know that there's not only going to be studios in one bedrooms, there'll be 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms as well. That's what's being proposed. And I can give you more specific information on that at another time if you want to email me or give me a call. My number is 914-377-6311. We can talk more about that. Someone asked about, mentioned affordable housing units. I think Jeremy brought that up in the chat. Do you guys want to, I don't think you guys really mentioned that too much about what you're proposing or what's being proposed. Can someone speak on that?
I can speak on that. So yes, we are proposing affordable units as part of each of the buildings. The exact ratio of those is still being sorted out, and we're going to work with the city to accommodate that. But we'll meet the requirements of the city's current code and actually probably provide some in excess of the current code requirements.
Okay, Nina, follow-up question. I know in the proposed scope right now, I believe it said the aggregate number that you guys are proposing is 12% instead of the 10% that's required. But within that 12%, 5% would be on-site and 7% off-site. Is that something that AMS is now looking to change?
That's the current proposal. That's what we're working with. But like I said, we're going to be working with the city to figure out how that shakes out. We have to do some analysis to figure it out.
Okay. I won't beat you guys up about that. You know, I'm passionate about affordable housing, but we'll get back to that conversation at another time. We want to work with you guys and make sure that the right thing happens for the community. So we'll definitely revisit that though. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see here. I believe, Rose, are there any questions that we didn't even touch on that you saw in the chat?
I'm not sure if they did touch on this, but Sumi Hernandez asked about the plan for the timeline, how long it would take. And then Lady Wanda also had a question concerning 5G towers and how they would destruct pollinator paths or our environment in any way. I'm not sure if those are things that even pertain to this project.
Okay. Do we have any answers or comments on those?
It's not a telecommunications project. So as of this moment, there are no towers proposed. However, we do end up with, very often in Yonkers, we do end up with cell phone installations, telecommunication setups on the top of taller buildings. One of the reasons that Yonkers does not have phony pine trees like on the Hutch is because we find a way to put them on buildings and keep them somewhat out of the public eye. So that really is not a part of the program. What was the earlier question?
The timeline about, I guess, how long, 'cause these are, very ambitious proposals, how long from, let's say if the city council approves tomorrow, how long from tomorrow until the end will this project take, on all three sides? Is it going to go up in phases? Is it going to take 10 years? Someone said in the chat that they heard this will be done over the course of 10 years. Can you guys speak about that timeline from construction to finished product?
Yeah, so the DEIS will include a very detailed phasing program. And what's likely to happen, and I think somebody did quote, and right now it's anticipated that the project would be built over 10 years. And the phasing plan that would be included in the DEIS sort of lays out what comes first, what comes second, and it's not contemplated to build all of Teutonia at one time, all of Chicken Island at one time, and all of North Broadway at one time. What's going to happen is that there's going to be towers of each of the projects that go up sequentially, and legit that helps obviously from a traffic perspective. But like I said, there will be a very detailed plan included in the environmental review documents. We're working with construction logistics firms to be able to figure that out, and we'll provide all that information to the community once it's decided.
Okay, thank you, Nina, for that breakdown. What other questions do we have?
Nancy Marin had a question. I'm not sure she has a microphone though. Nancy, do you have a microphone? Let's see. We'll get back to her.
Okay. Someone also asked about financing. I guess will the developer have to post bond in case they go broke in the middle of their build and leave an abandoned wreck? That's a good question.
I think the city probably, well, we're hoping that we're very confident that the developer is not going to go bankrupt in the middle, but I presume that the city has bonding requirements for construction projects, and so we would meet whatever those requirements are.
Okay.
And Nancy is on.
Hey, yeah, I would just second the request for the timeline. I'll look forward to seeing what that is, just so that we all get a sense of what those marks are. But my question was also just about anything we could read even now about research that points to the need for the volume and the type of residential units. Meaning, I know there's an issue about affordable housing that's come up, but even the rental versus ownership question. In other words, what's the basis for having even come up with this plan, if it's something for us to start looking at?
Thank you, Nancy. Those are good points. And I'm sure, I know Nina's taking notes. I'm sure that when I submit my comments for this project, I'll make sure that I mention those. So thank you. A very good question I don't think we touched on at all is from Leo Wilcox. She wanted to know if there'll be any upgrades to the sewage system, because there's been issues with that in the past, certainly with flooding. And is that something that's being thought about with this?
That, as I said earlier, that is one of the base level questions that we always look at. Infrastructure. If the excuse me, if the city engineering staff believes that any of the existing sewers are old and need to be TV'd, literally put a TV through them to review their quality, that will happen. If there are any, if there is any infrastructure that needs to be increased in order to meet the demand, that is part of the program as well.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Do we know why, what the thought process was behind proposing 40 stories at Teutonia? Taylor James wrote that, it's zoned for 25 stories in that area. Why is AMS looking to do 40 story?
I mean, I can field that, or Lee, you can field that. I mean, the applicant has proposed this design project, and in order to effectuate that, we're asking for a zoning change, which is a discretionary action by the city. They have determined that, you know, this is what the proposed project would include. And the city can decide, you know, whether it's appropriate to amend the zoning to accommodate the height of the proposed buildings.
And if let's say the zoning board okays it and says, you know, this is something that we think is absolutely doable and it makes sense in this area, and it gets to the city council and it doesn't pass the city council, is there what is the plan for AMS after, if that happens? Is there a plan? Is there a plan B? Are you just going to do the 25-story, which is the max that you can do, or what?
You know, we don't, like I said, being the application is what the application is. It just goes to the city council. We're actually not going to the zoning board. It's a city council discretionary action for all the amendments to the code that would need to be made to effectuate the project. So is there a plan B? There's not a plan B right now.
Okay. Thank you, Nina.
Joseph Pignon has been waiting for his question. I'm asking to unmute.
Joe, you can speak.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Obviously, thank you, Shanae, so much for doing this. Appreciate the opportunity to have a community discussion. I think obviously there's a lot of good stuff that comes with a project of this nature. I think also to Lee's point that this is a good opportunity for us to, as a community, to put a lot of that input in place so that we can have a broader conversation. My question really for AMS is that obviously we're here for the purposes of submitting information to go into the review process. But I think some of this stuff doesn't necessarily require a review process. We already know that homeless people are going to be displaced. We already kind of know that this is going to have an impact on people who have made Yonkers what it is, but aren't necessarily going to be able to take part in the future of what AMS is helping to make Yonkers become. And so I think one of the things that would be helpful for me, and I think some of the people I've spoken to, is just kind of hearing what are the things that AMS may be planning to do proactively that might help to stem some of these unintended or unavoidable consequences that we know will change the fabric of this community, and not always for the best.
It's a good question. I don't have an answer for you. I don't, you know, I'm not AMS. I'm not the applicant. We just represent the applicant doing the environmental review. And I think as Lee has mentioned earlier, those are all things that we're going to take a look at as part of the review. This is just the very first step in coming to the community and hearing your thoughts and gathering input on what we should be taking a look at and what the key issues are to the residents of the district. So like I said, we're taking notes, we're keeping everybody's comments, and we encourage everybody to submit them in writing, and you know, rest assured that your comments and concerns will be addressed as part of the environmental review process.
And I think Mr. Pinion does have a nicely tuned understanding of the process. There are some items that are not necessarily grist for the EIS and that can be looked at. Remember, this is ultimately going to be a political decision. This is a discretionary action of the city council. So we are looking at the environmental impacts that, as we can categorize them, for that action, which is, as you were saying, Mr. Pinion, there are some items that are available to be looked at today, available to be discussed between the community and the city council, even as the EIS is moving forward on the more infrastructure and physical actions.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments and questions, Joseph. Robin Brumfield has a very good question that we haven't touched on. I think we're probably going to take a few more questions and then wrap it up, but I'd like Robin to ask her question. Robin Brumfield, can we unmute? Is she still there? Yes, Robin, I see. Can you, I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, then I don't know if something's wrong with the.
Okay, I'm muted. Hi. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Shanae, for putting this together. It's very informative. But one of the things I did not hear, and I do have a concern in regards to minority and women business participation. Is there anything that we have that's ensuring that we're going to utilize minority and women business contractors, as well as hire the community, you know, and not just to raise, you know, to be the flag persons, but to really try to have local community participation so that there can be some economic, an economic impact to the minority community here. That's it. Thank you.
Has AMS thought about MWBE opportunities with this project?
So I think it's the intention, the AMS's intention, to integrate these projects into the community and of course employ local residents. While there isn't any, you know, specific public funding that is going to come with the project, that would come with it, have a certain requirement for utilizing M and WBE businesses. It's definitely something that we'll consider.
Okay. I was asked to read Nortrude Sparrow's comment about previous projects for these locations have failed several times, with residents indirectly footing the financial burdens of the failed developments. Will there be full disclosure of the financial history and viability of this developer and its principals? Nina, I don't know if that's something that you guys can answer, but I think Nortrude, that this is something that we can certainly ask AMS to do in the future. So I will make note of your comments because I do think it's important to have that kind of transparency, but we will give them an opportunity at a later time to answer that. Okay, it's almost 8:30. I think we are going to probably wrap up, and hopefully we'll, you know, do another one of these and just try to keep you guys engaged and, you know, keep the process going, keep having discussions, keep talking about this project and what it means for all of us in the community and for the developers, for the small businesses and just everybody across the board, because it is very important. I will definitely be submitting comments as the council member of the district. I know that the city council as a whole will be submitting comments as well. And I'm encouraging all of you, if you don't want to send your own comments, you can certainly send them to me. But if not, please email Lee Elman. His email was shared earlier, but we'll repeat it. It's Lee, lee.elman, ELLMAN @yonkersny.gov. And my email is my name, ShanaeV.Williams @yonkersny.gov. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Rose, for your assistance and your partnership. Thank you so much to the Yonkers Public Library. Again, thank you everyone for joining us on this call. And I hope that it was, you know, informative, and hopefully you have some things to think about, and hopefully you'll be submitting your comments before December 21st. That is the deadline. And I guess that's it for now. We'll pick the conversation back up, whether it's in a real estate meeting with my colleagues on the council or another one of these public meetings. Thank you and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you all.